Hey folks, welcome to your Sunday morning breakdown a day after the match last night and a chance to review the game in a bit of a calmer manner knowing the result that it was and a chance to just look back at the issues that Leeds had, the game in full and see what actually went wrong. We're going to look at the goals in a bit more detail and a couple of other chances as well. And I suppose at this point, because it will be said by some people want to just dust the game off and move on. I don't like doing that. Daniel Farke said don't overanalyze the game. We're going to overanalyze the goals anyway, at least, and just see if there's systemic issues from different games. And there's been a couple of bits that have kind of stood out as I've gone through this morning. We've watched it back, but I suppose it's a good point to start this with. What should we actually expect from Leeds United in this division this year? What's a realistic expectation? Because yeah, it's fair to say that Leeds won't live with every single side in the Premier League this season. Leeds won't outplay really, really good sides. But there's things we can do. We can battle. It was interesting to see the comments yesterday after the game when I pointed out that Leeds had a more aggressive and intense style of their play against the likes of Everton and Newcastle. And someone said, yeah, but we didn't win those games. We beat Everton and we drew with Newcastle. So it can work and we have done it. We can be more aggressive. We can be better defensively organised. And there are some issues in this defence. We pointed out last week when West Ham scored, there was a little bit of ball watching. You go back to the Arsenal game, we covered it then as well. There has been a bit of ball watching, and that's a thread that will carry through the video here today as we go through things. But there's little things Leeds can do to at least be a little bit more harder to beat, or at least a little bit harder to score against. But it is fair to say that this is a very, very good Brighton side. They play a very good brand of football. We'll talk about statistics as well, but there are some bits for me that I think are worth diving into, and that's fundamentals of football. And this is what we should, at a bare minimum, expect from any side in any league, and that's tracking your runners, knowing who you're marking, where you're supposed to be, and staying with your man. Know where you're supposed to be on the pitch and the balls in different areas of it. Be tactically aware. Do the job you're being asked to do. A to B passing. Simple enough. Don't give the ball away. Keep it when you get it. It's so vital in this league that when you get the ball, you've got to hang on to it for as long as you can, because you do more work without the ball than you do with it. It's a chance to keep the legs a little bit fresher, but also control the momentum of the game as well. And do the basics of the game really, really well. And I think there's been issues in the last, since Arsenal, again, the games we haven't won, and even at times in the games we have won, we haven't always done the basics particularly well. We don't always take care of the ball an awful lot, as much as we should, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say there. But there are bits and pieces in this, but it's a chance today to have a little bit of a deeper look at the game and a little bit of a deeper look at the goals that we scored. As I said, I didn't expect to win this game. I would have liked a draw. I think a lot of people would have thought a draw was a very good result, but I think there's a manner in defeat as well. I mean, you don't want to be getting rolled over by teams either. Leeds have now conceded 17 goals this season in their 10 games, and yes, 5 came against Arsenal, but 3 came against Brighton. And outside of the first couple of games, Leeds haven't kept a clean sheet since the 30th of August. And if you can keep a clean sheet, if you can get 0-0s, grind your way, aggressive, kick your way nearly to some 0-0 draws, you're picking points up along the way. And right now we're not doing that. Burnley have conceded 19, but they've scored 12. We've only scored 9 goals. So we're in that block of 5 teams now at the bottom where we're starting to get cut adrift from the rest of the sides in terms of the volume of goals that we're conceding. And I think Daniel Farke's point about not getting his final creative player, he's talking about one player, is a valid point and something that should be said. However, we did get every single one of our defensive targets, and Daniel Farke is part of that recruitment process. He said it himself that he signs off on all of these players. And he might not always get the one that he wants, and he might not get his first choice because another club can come in and outbid him for it. But he got all of his defenders to the point where we've got one that's actually not even in the matchday squad. We got all of our midfield options, and we play with 3 defensive midfielders more often than not. So keeping clean sheets, or at least keeping the score down, should be something that Leeds will look to do. Daniel Farke after the game spoke about the possession stats, and he does that quite a lot. He leans to the statistics, and I do that as well, and I quite like statistics. They're not everything, and everyone will say statistics mean nothing, it's the score that matters. And you're correct, you're right, it does. But it does give you an indication of where you were in the game. And Daniel Farke said after the game that we were 50-50 with them. And we were. But the question for me is always, what did you do with that possession? Were you effective with that? Did you impact the game in it? What did you actually achieve from the statistics that you put on the board? Because if you look at the 50 that Brighton got, they moved the ball significantly quicker than Leeds United. Their goals, all of their goals in this game, from start to finish of moves, all happened pretty much within 30 seconds. And that's a hell of a speed to be going from back to front to scoring a goal, even from throw-ins. So Leeds can be a bit more pedestrian when they get the ball. They can be a bit slower in their build-up, which gives teams a chance to organise. And when Leeds do things at pace, like the first half against West Ham, we're really good. We can be a good side. And I think sometimes people just lean on the recruitment was the problem. We didn't get good enough players. We got good enough players to compete, at least to get points, at least to be aggressive, at least to be difficult to play against. And if you lose, you lose. And that's okay. But as long as you put up a bit of a fight. But the game here, it really did turn on the substitutions as well. It kind of flipped. But Leeds didn't really do a huge amount. If you look at the statistics, the XG 3.07 for Brighton, 0.5 for Leeds. Total shots in the game, 14 from Brighton, 5 from Leeds. 2 of those in 90 minutes were on target, and one of those comes from Lucas Mecha towards the end of the game. Passes wise, 491 from Brighton, 486 for Leeds. So yeah, still in the mix with that. But what did you do with that? Did you create anything? Where were those passes in the game? Were most of them around the back line? Did you try and be progressive with your balls forward? Did you try and do it at speed? And then the interesting one for me was the tackles. Brighton at 24, Leeds at 12. So you're not even winning the battle. And that's the thing. There's an old saying in football, you've got to earn the right to win football. You've got to win the battle before you can win the game. And we didn't win that battle. The couple of tackles that we did kind of came in anger, kicking out of people. Ethan Ampadu was nutmegged at one point and clears a player out as a result of that. So it's got to be different. It's got to be better than that. But playing out from the back seems to be a bit of a problem for Leeds United, especially against a press-intensive side like Brighton, who will press you. And there's Arsenal did it against us as well. We had a bit of joy against West Ham when we went from back to front. Lucas Perry's kicking is not great in the short passes, but it's pretty accurate in the long ones as well. So when we do go long to a 6'4" striker, we've been relatively effective. And then the other issue for me as well is getting the wingers in and around the striker as well. We're not doing enough of that. So when the ball does go to DCL or Lucas Mecha, the wingers have got to tuck in. They're very wide in the 4-3-3, which leaves a gap between the midfield and the front. But yeah, basically, fundamentals of football need to be done better. A to B passing, winning your tackles, winning your duels, following your players, sticking with runners around the park and looking for the ball. When we do get the ball, there's not enough players coming short and looking for it. Wingers aren't crossing over. We're not trying to cause difficulties. We kind of run into our positions and stay there. And the more I look back on this game, the more you could see that when Leeds got it out from the back, everybody else was pretty much in place and set and marked. So people have got to start moving more, and there's got to be more movement off the ball to help the defenders to get out a little bit better if you're going to do that. But we will get stuck into the goals, and we'll start off with the first one, and then, yeah, I'll vanish off down here into a corner. But I've highlighted 2 players in this. I've highlighted Danny Welbeck, who scores the goal, and I've highlighted Weaver, who is the guy that gets the assist for this. And as it starts off, it's a throw-in on the edge of the box. The throw-in goes in, and it's headed clear by Gabby Goodmunson. And Sean Longstaff is, I think it's a Kadioglu here on the edge of the box, who gets a shot away, and it's blocked by Ethan Ampadu. And it comes out to Van Heck. And you can see in this position here, the key thing for me here is watch the player's body shape and watch where their faces are facing. Because as this ball goes down the line, everyone's watching the ball. But there's no danger here for me. Everyone's in a decent position. I'd probably like to see Sean Longstaff drop a little bit more where the 2 players are. But outside of that right now, there's no real danger. But as the ball goes into Minte's feet, and he was excellent. He's a really good player and caused us no end of trouble. You can see the amount of Leeds players that are highlighted there. Every single player is watching the ball. You can see Danny Welbeck highlighted as well, and then Weaver. Minte takes the ball in this position and he comes in field with it. Just goes around Gabby Goodmunson, and Goodmunson's in a difficult position here because he's technically marking Minte, not Weaver. So as he goes inside and Weaver makes the run, now there's a decision to make. Does he stay with Minte? And there's a couple of things could happen here. Ethan Ampadu could come across a little bit more. Outanaka can press the ball. No, Okafor could step to the left and cut the run out. But none of that happens, and the ball's flicked over the top, and Gabby Goodmunson has to track the run. And bearing in mind, he's just tracked Minte around, and now he has to double back, and he doesn't have the momentum, doesn't have the distance to cover, and Weaver gets in around the back of him. At this point now, you've got 4 Leeds players highlighted, all watching the ball. Noah Okafor doesn't really move from the initial cut inside for Minte to the ball going in the back of the net. Now, Lucas Perry gets criticised for coming out here, and maybe he comes a bit too wide, but if he doesn't come in this position, it's a free shot on goal anyway. He's the only player that can engage the ball. So he does. All the other Leeds players head back towards the goal line. And as it's passed in, Danny Welbeck is a intelligent, smart, experienced striker. He just holds his run, just steps off, just drops. And the players continue to run to the goal line. And he gets a tap in. From the throw-in on the far side to the ball going into the back of the net, it took 25 seconds. There was 1 block in the entire phase of play. There was no tackles made at any point. And it was a bad goal from start to finish. There was multiple opportunities throughout that move to stop that ball from going in the back of the net. We're not close enough to their players. We're not cutting out their runs. We're not limiting space. We're giving them room to play in. And we're focused on the ball. And we're not focused on the men. And if you look back to the goal that was scored last week by West Ham, it's the same thing with Fernandes. He makes a run in the blind side. Everyone's watching the ball. Go back to the Arsenal game, especially the two corners. Everyone's watching the ball. No one's watching the players. And that's an issue that has to be addressed. And it's not a major issue. It's a simple enough one that should be able to be boxed off. Then at 56 minutes, the substitutions are made. Longstaff goes off for Stack and James goes off for Tanaka. And Daniel Farke changes the system. At this point, I didn't have a massive issue with it in the watch along. I kind of said, we're asking Daniel Farke to be a bit more flexible with his tactics. I'd like to see him go to 3-5-2. But he goes to 4-2-3-1. System most players should know. But the one issue with this is it probably removes a midfielder from that block. And with Danny Welbeck consistently dropping into midfield, they already have an overload as it is in there. You're now adding a second one in there by taking a Leeds player out. So it kind of falls apart from there. And 4 minutes later, Brighton scored the next goal. And this one starts off at the back, kind of passing it around a little bit, trying to move Leeds left to right, trying to create some space, but no major issue. They go across to the right-hand side, and it's Van Heck here. But you can see here, Gomez has dropped all the way into his own half, and Yacobiol has gone with him. Now, I've criticised Pascal Struijk this season for doing that, and I'm going to criticise Yacobiol for doing it as well, because it leaves a hole at the back. There's now a question to be asked, though. If both left centre-backs have done this consistently, when it was Struijk in there and when it was Biol in there, if they're both still doing it, is it an instruction that they're being asked to do? I don't know the answer for that. But he's the number 10. Gomez is playing in the 10 at this point when the shapes change. For me, I'd like to see Ampadu going across there because Ampadu's just marking space. And let Biol stay in his position, because what happens here is Biol's out of his normal position, I should say. And Van Heck just dinks the ball over the top into that space. But there's gaps now. You can see now tracking back. Biol's trying to make the run to get back. So is Ampadu. Gomez is still with him. Ball goes out to the right-hand side to Minte again. And Gabby Goodmunson's there. But there's space for him to run at. And as he runs at him, Gomez makes the run. Biol now has a decision to make. He has to try and close that space a little bit because he's going to go beyond Goodmunson. Doesn't ever really get there. But Gomez is on the blind side of Biol. So Biol has no idea now he's there. Ethan Ampadu is looking across and can see that. For me, I want to see Ethan Ampadu step across that run. Just block the run. That stops the goal. As he gets to the end line, we're still in the same positions. The pullback comes and Jorginho Rutter very cleverly just steps over the ball. And none of the two players really deal with the runner. And it's a tap into the back of the net. And from back to front for that goal, I think it was 15 seconds. And again, not one tackle was made in that entire part. Gabby doesn't tackle it on the left-hand side. We don't get close enough. We're standing off all the time. We're not putting tackles in areas. We're not trying to make it difficult. And it's a tap-in for Gomez in the 6-yard area. That's 2 goals and 2 tap-ins in and around the 6-yard area. So, problem there. 5 minutes later, Brighton score again. And then there's a pattern starting to emerge with the goals. So, Brighton start off at the back. And nothing wrong here. The ball was cleared long down the field. And Lucas Mecha does well here. He presses the ball and he forces Lewis Dunk just to kick it away. That's all he's done. But he's pressed him and he's forced him into making a decision. He's trying to force a mistake and he's kicked it long. He doesn't allow him to pick out the pass that he wants to. And as it goes forward, it's pretty safe. Ball bounces. Brodon knocks it back to Lucas Perry. And we know his short game isn't probably his best, but there's, again, culpability across the board here from this position. But again, there's no danger here. He could go long and the goal never happens. Right? That's the first one for me. But he decides to clip it out to Jayden Bogle in the bottom of the screen there. And Bogle is in space. So he's got time here. Maybe the pass is a little bit under hit. But there's a moment here where Jayden Bogle goes to go to the ball to get closer to it. And then just hesitates and steps back. And that little step back allows Jorginho Rutter to get a touch on it. But then it goes to this position where Bogle's in a good position. Rutter's got his back to goal. He's got the sideline in front of him. He doesn't have a huge amount of options around him to play into. So again, right now, there's no real danger. Gomez is not in the screen. Cannot be seen at this point. As he flicks it over his head, Joe Rodon goes up with Danny Welbeck. The header is 1. And now Jayden Bogle has the ball in this position. Again, straightforward enough. Either knock it straight across to Yacobiol or put your laces through the ball and just get rid of it. Get rid of the danger. Limit that immediately. But he doesn't. And what happens here is it hits his knee and it bounces straight into the path of Jorginho Rutter, who makes a run into the penalty area. Ethan Ampadu can't really tackle the way he would like to tackle in that position because he's in the penalty area. But all the players, again, now are getting sucked in towards the ball. Again, no sign of Gomez in the box at all at this point. And as Rutter goes to the end line, there's Gomez. Look at the space that Gomez has in Leeds' penalty area. He's in acres of space. Now, we'll get to whose responsibility that should be, but the system change has happened at this point, and Leeds have lost a man in the centre of the park. Who marks Gomez? We'll get to it in a second. But as Rutter gets there, he pulls it back, And again, goes beyond everyone. Look at the amount of Leeds bodies that are there, and none of them are covering the runner into the penalty area, and Gomez gets a shot in on goal. When we look at it from this angle, we say, well, who is responsible for Gomez? As the ball is built up, it could be Gabby Goodmunson. Maybe he should be coming back across there. You've got no Okafor in the distance, but he's playing in acres of space. So much space as that happens. And then as it runs forward there, you can see Gabby Goodmunson's now coming in to try and cover the back post. So Minte, who's probably the man he actually is marking, is Minte. And you've got Yacobial, who's in a decent position there, covering both the goal, far post and there. But as it runs through, we end up there. So yeah, basically there's an issue with bodies there. There's a lot of people will ask Leeds to go up to a 4-4-2. And if you go to a 4-4-2, you lose a body in the middle of the park. And that will happen more often than not then, because other teams won't do that. They will continue to hold three men in the middle of the park. You'll have an overload when you're defending, and situations like this will pop up. But again, there's a lot of ball watching in this for me. There's no one having a look over their shoulder to see, well, where is the danger? Is there anybody else around? Do I close a space? Do I close a man? The ball goes in the back of the net. And there's the pullback from Georgie, and it's tapping. Now, they're the two goals, and there's a consistency, I should say, cutbacks. Funny, when we were in the Premier League the last time, Jesse Marsh got absolutely hammered by everybody, and rightly so, for Leeds conceding the exact same goal. Ball to the end line, cutback, free runner, goal. There's three of them in this game. But we're told to dust this one off and just move on to the next game. There's issues that need to be addressed. They do need to be sorted, because they will come back to bite you on the arse again. They'll keep coming back up unless they're addressed. And I'm sure Daniel Farke will address them. I'm sure they will be working on them in training. But there's two more incidents. Now, there's a lot more, but I've picked out two after the goals that were issues for Leeds. This is a free kick in the 74th minute. And again, highlighted on the edge of the penalty area is Gomez in a huge amount of space. The defensive line is fine. Joe Rodon's keeping an eye outwards. Probably can see Gomez, and he's probably the first player that actually gets to him. But as it's crossed in, Joe Rodon actually wins the header. From this position, Gomez has time to take a touch and then shoot with the outside of his foot into body players. Lucas Perry makes a really good save. Now, at this position, I'd stop it and I'd have a look. Number 26, who was at the back post, is Ayari. He's completely free, and everyone's watching the ball again. Every single player is watching the ball, and it goes to Ayari. Duncan's in there as well. Goes to Ayari. And luckily for Leeds, he doesn't take a first-time shot. He's kind of caught off guard, and Leeds get their bodies back in around it. Bit panicky defending, but they managed to get rid of it. And defending's defending. If you get rid of it, job done. But again, an underlying problem of not picking up the man watching the ball. Then we go into the 82nd minute, and I've highlighted, I believe it's Simas, who's the substitute that came on. You've got Watson outside of him, who's a young player that came on the left-hand side. And in this move, there's a ball played forward. Minte on the far side is with Gabby Goodmunson, and that's probably the initial danger that I initially thought there would be danger there. As he plays that ball through, Minte's gotten away from Goodmunson, and you think if Watson goes first time across the box, you've got a problem here, but he doesn't. And it's good defending by James Justin, who stops him from doing that. But as he gets into the penalty area, and I've highlighted again Simas as he runs through, keep an eye on Simas's run through. As he gets there, Rodon and kind of Justin get in each other's way a little bit. Ball breaks through, and it's Simas who runs onto the ball free again. Lucas Perry comes out to deal with it. He gets a deflection off Perry, blocks the first one, but he gets a chance, again, no player with him, to turn and have a look up. And again, no sign of Gomez in the penalty area at this point, but he has a little look up. Every single Leeds player is now running towards the ball, creating space in behind him. The ball gets pulled back, and now there's a check to react to that. And there's Gomez running onto the ball in free space in Leeds penalty area again. And he has a shot, and Lucas Perry makes a good save. And I've highlighted all the Leeds players there as well to show the issue that's in that one. So, yeah, consistent issues for me throughout that. And it goes back to the same thing of, this is basic enough stuff. This is tracking your runners, knowing where you're supposed to be, tackling when the ball is there, being aware of what's around you, and limiting space and options. And we didn't do that. And they're not overly complicated things that need to be done, but there is a little pattern of ball watching that's creeping in. Now, what we'll do during the international break, when I've got a little bit more time, I'll go through every single goal Leeds have conceded this season, and I'll look at that in more detail. But I noticed it against Arsenal, I noticed it against West Ham, I noticed it against Bournemouth as well, the 2 goals there. There's a little bit of ball watching happening. We're more concerned, and maybe that's just maybe it's a levels thing. Maybe it's a levels thing. Maybe it's a case of just being a little bit overwhelmed by the speed of the ball around you. But a lot of these are international players as well that Leeds have got. They should be okay with this. They should be used to this kind of stuff, but they don't appear to be. And it goes back to one of the other issues with me is Leeds just generally tend to do things just a little bit too slowly for me. We tend to come out from the back too slowly. We tend to pass the ball too slowly. We tend to switch the ball from left to right just a little bit too slowly. Not massively stuff, but a little bit. And then in transitions, we're a bit too slow as well. And transitions in the Premier League are massive. I think we talked about them at the start of the season, that the transition between a defence to attack and attack to defence, it's really important that you get them right and you do them properly, because if you don't, you will get taken apart in this league. So a really bad day at the office for Leeds United from that perspective. Again, didn't expect us to get a huge amount from that game. But when you look at these goals, there's a lot of individual errors here. There's a lot of shape issues here. These are stuff that should be basic enough to deal with. And against the side that moved the ball quickly, good on the press, good in transition, and they are about 30 seconds the last goal from back to goal. They do things rapidly and they cause problems because you can't get set. When the ball's being moved quickly, you cannot settle in. So that's the problem. Leeds, again, when they do it slowly, opposition get time to get set, get their blocks in. But yeah, tough game, a good side, a very well organised side, a team with a very clear identity. I'm not sure what our identity is supposed to be, but Daniel Farke talked about it in the press conference last week where he said you can see that the Hussars' fingerprint is on this side. I'm not really sure what our fingerprint is at this point, but we're at the 10-game mark. We should start seeing Leeds clicking into gear a little bit more. But it does mean that the Nottingham Forest game coming up now is an important game to get something from, so that you don't come out of a block of 4 games that had 2 games in it that were 2 or 3 games in it that you could have got something from, and you only come out of it with 3 points. So again, that run ahead in November, December is the reason for that. We're just about ahead the point per game average. There is a distinct possibility if you get nothing against Nottingham Forest that you could end up in December on the exact same amount of points as now. So we've got to start looking at picking points up against Forest. Got to try and pick up points against maybe the Crystal Palaces, the Sunderlands, the Aston Villas maybe. They won't be easy either. So it is a difficult task. This league isn't easy. No one thinks it is. It shouldn't be. I'm not naive enough to think that we should be walking teams off the park or beating teams easily. Not the case. But you can be harder to beat. And we showed early in the season that when we were close to players, that when we were aggressive, when we were intense, that we could live with these teams, and if nothing else, make it really difficult for them to play in games. That game for me for Brighton, they were the home side, but they got a chance to play pretty easily around Leeds United. We definitely looked like the second team to that. And Daniel Farke has criticised the performance, rightfully so, but I think it should be analysed. I don't think we should dust it off and just move on to the next game, because there are patterns that are emerging in certain games, and they have to start addressing those patterns because there's a predictability to it. If you've got a team of sports analysts who are watching game after game after game of the opposition sides, and they're looking at Leeds, there's a pattern there to know how do you beat Leeds United, get to the end line, pull it back. And that was there before, the last time we were in the Premier League as well. So it needs to be addressed, but we'll see where we go. Let me know your thoughts on this, how you go. Didn't do match ratings today because, to be honest with you, I did them last week, and people just argue with me about match ratings because they have their own opinion, but the point of it is they're subjective. But we'll get back to match ratings last week. There was just a lot of stuff in this to cover. We're about 23 minutes already, so I didn't want to go too long. But there you go. That's your breakdown of the goals for yesterday. It's just my opinion on it. If you've got your own opinion, that's absolutely fine. Everyone looks at football slightly differently, but I think there are preventable stuff there. And keep an eye on the ball watching for me. That'll be it for me, folks. Today, I'm back on Monday morning for the news. See you then. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks for watching. Bye.